Now the latest ITV News in London.
Tonight, cuts bite at Croydon Council. After bankruptcy last year, the council must find £34 million of savings. Purley swimming pool looks set to close for good.
I have mobility issues, so therefore swimming is actually very good for me. In the last year and a half it's been closed, I've put on weight.
Campaigners are protesting now outside the town hall. We'll have the latest live. Also ahead, we're in King's College Hospital as the NHS urges unvaccinated pregnant women to get the jab. They make up a fifth of England's sickest COVID cases.
It's traumatic, and the truth is my husband was possibly going to lose both of us.
Why picking mushrooms in Epping Forest is destroying ancient woodland, and
I'm really having the time of my life. I know I'm doing everything wrong.
George Clooney at the London Film Festival and happier than ever as a father who's just turned 60. Good evening. This time last year, Croydon Council was on the brink of bankruptcy. In November, it declared itself bankrupt and a huge £120 million government bailout followed to balance the books. Now the cuts are biting. £34 million has to be found with difficult decisions to be made. Martin Stew is outside Croydon Town Hall for a meeting this evening. Martin, which services exactly are at risk?
Hard to say for sure, Ronke, because a lot of stuff is still under consultation. What we do know is some services, like bin collection, councils have to do, but pretty much everything else is up for consideration. We're already seeing grass being cut less often, graffiti cleaned less often, but it's bigger things that are going to need to be cut to make up that £34 million you talked about. What the protesters here are very angry about is a potential cut to council tax benefits. That could cost people £20 or £30 per week. One cut we do know the council have confirmed they are looking into is the closure of Purley Pool. And people I've been speaking to today who rely on that leisure centre are pretty angry.
So, Jim, who is regularly swimming here at the moment? So we're swimming every week.
At St Aidan's Catholic Primary.
Who would like to be swimming every week in here?
They know the benefits of swimming.
If you fall off a boat or any situation, you could drown. It's very important because it's part of our school curriculum and you should be able to swim by the time you leave year 6.
Their nearest public pool in Purley closed during the pandemic and is now unlikely to open again because the council, which essentially went bust last year, says it can't afford the £3 million needed to update pipework and ventilation.
It hasn't been able to reopen because its air handling system fails the government guidelines for public buildings post-pandemic. In addition to that, there is a big bill for replacing plant equipment, and at the moment the council is not in a position to invest significant amounts of money in an ageing facility.
The next nearest public pool is Wadden, a 52-minute journey each way, requiring a change of buses.
Having got off the second bus, there's then the pretty tricky job of getting across 5 ways, this really, really busy junction.
Deputy Head Mrs Poole says the round trip will take half a day.
3 hours out of our day, which means I'm going to have to think about what subjects we miss in between while, which is also not a position we want to be in because all subjects are important in the primary curriculum.
Save Purley Pool!
As well as school kids, the pool was regularly used by both mentally and physically disabled swimmers.
I'm totally gutted.
Paul has been coming here for 20 years.
I've used this at least once or twice a week. I have mobility issues, so therefore swimming is actually very good for me. In the last year and a half it's been closed, I've put on weight.
Swim England estimates 2,000 pools like Purley will shut by 2030 as a result of a lack of investment. Former world champion Mark Foster, who grew up in Essex, says funding exercise is cheaper than paying to fix the obesity crisis.
It's about creating good habits, and if it starts at an early age, being fit, being healthy, being active becomes a habit.
The council is asking for feedback over the next 6 weeks before making a final decision. There is a chance a new pool could be built by developers who want to put up flats on the land, but that wouldn't happen for years. Martin Stew, ITV News.
And Martin, when do we expect these cuts to start taking effect?
Well, Ronke, I think we'll get a decision on Purley Pool this side of Christmas. Some of those other bigger cuts, like the welfare, the benefits we were talking about earlier, wouldn't happen until next year. So the big council meeting for the budget is in February. Any decisions they make then would kick in from April. OK, Martin Stew, thank you very much. The Metropolitan Police is to take no further action against Prince Andrew over allegations he sexually assaulted a teenager 2 decades ago. Officers at Scotland Yard reviewed the case after Virginia Giuffre filed a lawsuit in August claiming she'd been sexually abused by the Prince in London when she was 17. The Duke denies the allegations. Transport for London has unveiled plans for a memorial to remember staff who lost their lives during the pandemic. 98 TfL workers died from COVID while keeping the capital moving during the lockdowns. The memorial is set to be in a place of quiet reflection and remembrance. It'll be in Aldgate and should open to the public by the summer of 2022. The inquest into the deaths of 4 men at the hands of serial killer Stephen Port today heard from a senior officer investigating the case. The victim, Anthony Walgate, was a young gay man and his death potentially involved drugs. But DCI Chris Jones denied there was a bias in the way the police handled the investigation. Rags Martel reports.
A serial killer and rapist, Stephen Port murdered 4 young men. At their inquests, today's evidence focused on his first murder, that of student Anthony Walgate, who was 23. But in a strange twist, it was Port who made the first 999 call from his flat.
There's a young boy, looks like he's collapsed outside. He looks like he's collapsed or had a seizure or something. Just drunk.
The inquests listed some of the clues surrounding Anthony Walgate's rape and murder. His body was found with bruised arms, his trousers were unbuttoned, some of his clothes were on inside out and back to front. But at the time, the top-ranking police officer in charge of the investigation refused to say that his death was suspicious. Giving evidence at the hearing in Barking, Detective Chief Inspector Chris Jones told the jury not all homicides are clear. There are unexplained deaths. In my view, on the day, it hadn't crossed the threshold of suspicious death. But at the time, even police in Barking had their doubts. A few days after Anthony Walgate was found outside Port's flat on Cook Street, they asked for the case to be taken over by the more experienced Met Police murder squad. They spelt it out. On the balance of probabilities, they wrote, Mr. Walgate died at the hands of another. At the inquests, the now retired police officer was asked if he had any bias because the victim was gay. You're alluding to unconscious bias, he said. I'm absolutely content that doesn't exist in the way I approach any investigation. But after Anthony Walgate, 3 other young men were killed at the hands of Stephen Port. Their inquest is looking at the competence and adequacy of the police investigation. Rags Martel, ITV News, Barking.
Police are appealing for help to find a missing 14-year-old girl. Hafiza has been missing since Thursday when she left school but didn't take her usual route home. She was wearing a hooded coat and a black backpack when she was last seen. Next, Tyrone Airy was 46 when he died. He suffered a fatal overdose when in hospital receiving treatment for a sickle cell crisis. An inquest ruled that neglect contributed to his death. Northwick Park Hospital has apologised and now has a dedicated sickle cell unit. Divya Kohli reports.
A heartbroken mother remembers her son.
He loved music from a very young age. I have a picture of him about age 3, in front of a turntable. So from that age till he sadly passed, you know, always interested in music.
46-year-old Tyrone Airy, who suffered from sickle cell disease, died in March this year. He'd gone to Northwick Park Hospital for pain relief. He was moved to one ward with no medication for more than an hour, and then to another ward where he was fitted with a morphine pump, but he was left to fatally overdose on the morphine.
Nobody called a doctor or anything. So from 5:30 until the 17th of March at 10:30 or 10:52, because the records weren't very legible as to when he actually died.
So you don't even know the exact time of his death?
I don't know the exact time of his death.
Tyrone was born with sickle cell disease, a genetic red blood cell condition that affects millions of people each year. The blood cells become distorted, causing excruciating pain. At his inquest, Barnet Coroner's Court ruled Tyrone's death was contributed to by neglect at the Watford Road Hospital. Tyrone's mother, Lorraine, says he wasn't monitored, and if the hospital had followed the local trust and national NHS policies, her son would still be alive today.
I'm just always horrified and appalled, you know, just at the inhumane treatment, because as I've said, it's not the first time, it's not the second time, it's not the 10th time Tyrone has been in hospital, probably 40 times in his life.
Northwick Park Hospital says, "We offer our sincere condolences and unreserved apologies to Mr Airy's family. We have carried out an internal investigation into the care and treatment Mr Airy received and fully accept that his care fell below the standards we would expect." The hospital has pledged to establish a dedicated sickle cell unit on its haematology ward and says staff have already undertaken improved sickle cell training.
What do you miss about him the most?
I miss that very, very special one-to-one time that we used to have, and the, you know, relationship that we shared where we could just look at each other and not say anything and understand, you know, what each other was thinking. You know, we might crack up laughing about something.
Divya Kohli, ITV News.
The NHS is urging unvaccinated pregnant women to get the COVID jab after figures revealed they make up almost a fifth of the most critically ill patients. Doctors at King's College Hospital are warning of the danger of catching the virus while pregnant, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Sam and Claire's baby son is just days away from being born. But in July, just as she was due to be jabbed, Claire caught COVID and went downhill fast. She spent 12 days on a ventilator in St Thomas's.
After being admitted, my oxygen levels just kept decreasing, mainly because as being pregnant, he was obviously taking what he needed with the oxygen, and my lungs were getting squished and I just couldn't maintain what oxygen levels that I needed.
You've been sick for a long time, but you're very safe now.
In the intensive care unit at King's in Camberwell, the number of unvaccinated pregnant women on life support because of COVID has become a worrying trend. Even those patients who survive face a greater risk of a miscarriage or premature labour.
There's something about being pregnant that makes our immune systems change and makes us more at risk from viral infections generally. And COVID exploits this and is more dangerous to women who are pregnant.
Like many mums-to-be, Hannah, who's from East Dulwich, was worried about the effect of the vaccine on her unborn baby. Eventually, she opted for the jab.
Having read up about various studies and also that the vaccine had been out for quite a while by the time I had it, I kind of decided that the risks were just too great not to have it.
Claire's experience was frightening.
I wouldn't want anyone to go through what we've gone through. It's traumatic, and the truth is my husband was possibly going to lose both of us, or he was going to be a single dad, and that's the truth of it, really. So, I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Some of the worst affected COVID patients have to be treated with an ECMO machine, which oxygenates the blood when lungs can no longer cope. The NHS says 1 in 5 patients having ECMO therapy are unvaccinated pregnant mums. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Still to come, Sally's been in an ancient woodland to see the damage done by picking wild mushrooms, and George Clooney at the London Film Festival on why he's not letting age catch up with him. More than a week after people living in an East London tower block were told to evacuate their homes, some are still living there. fearful they may get burgled or because the alternative accommodation isn't suitable for their families. The building's unsafe and has been deemed a fire risk. Clarion Housing Group say more than half of those living there have already left. Antoine Allen reports.
This building is dangerous and by now should be empty. All 120 households were told by building owner Clarion that they would aim to move them all by the 5th of October.
Yeah, first of all, you think it's a joke. Sorry.
But after being given just days to leave due to fire safety failures, some families have yet to move out due to a range of concerns. Fear of burglary,
the leak,
fear of homelessness, fear of being disconnected from support. Fumi and her children haven't moved because she says Clarion offered her a home that is too far away.
I am very afraid, of the unknown. It's all well and good for people to say, oh, they're going to be compensated. But imagine you getting a knock on the door and being told you need to leave now.
Fumi, you have been offered the home in Canary Wharf, so why was that not suitable for your needs?
My network here, my mum, my kids' school's just round the corner. On a good day, most of the times, we work down to school. And days when my mum needs me, I'm her go-to person.
Santa says she's been complaining about the maintenance of her flat for years. Her ongoing court case with Clarion means she's afraid to leave her home without further reassurance.
They're supposed to give me some letter in writing say, Santa, you can move for the temporary accommodation and you still be tenant. But because they don't do it yet, I am afraid to leave because I think they can leave me in the street.
OK, so,
Dawood has accepted temporary accommodation, but he is back in his flat as he fears for his possessions.
On the 5th floor, there was a few nights ago, there was attempted break-in. There was a small group of people trying to break down the door. I reckon those doors are quite tough, but you're worried about your possessions. No one's here. At least when you're all on the same floor, if you hear a noise, you can come out and see what's going on. When no one's here, you don't know what's going to happen.
Clarion says more than half of the residents have already left Clare House, and 109 out of the 120 households have been booked into temporary accommodation. Safety comes first, and that is why our priority continues to support people to move out of the building without delay. Antoine Allen, ITV News.
Now, this afternoon in central London, remarkable women who have achieved great things over the last year have been celebrated at the annual Women of the Year. Among them, there was a Lifetime Achievement Award for Dame Esther Ransom, singled out this year for her work on Childline, Silverline and mental health courses. I called up with her a little earlier after her speech and began by asking her about going up to receive the award. So there was such warmth for you in that room when the award was announced, Esther. What was it like being up on that stage instead of helping behind the scenes?
Well, it was quite frightening because I do know it's the event of the year and it's filled with people who've achieved so much individually, and looking round, I couldn't believe that I was getting the award when there are so many more women in that room who deserved it more than me.
I'm not sure that's true. I mean, we all associate you with Childline. I can't believe 1986 it was started. 5.5 million counselling sessions you've given in that time. I mean, it just shows what a need there is for that service.
Yes, and I'm terribly lucky because people associate me with Childline, and therefore young adults who have used Childline when they were children come and talk to me, and very often the first thing they say to me is, without Childline I wouldn't be here today. So it's doing amazingly good work.
And of course you also started Silverline right at the other end of the spectrum, dealing with the elderly and loneliness. Just tell us a bit about that service.
Well, in 2013 we launched it nationally, and it's received something like 3.5 million calls from older people who are literally not talking to anyone else, and it's a measure of how isolated some of our older people are. One of them said that when he put down the phone to us, he felt as if he'd joined the human race again. And I'm quite angry that so many older people are being ignored and neglected that they've turned to us as a helpline.
And of course, these services wouldn't be able to continue to run without the volunteers, the staff that give their time for nothing.
Absolutely. We have amazing staff who train armies of volunteers, both for Childline and the Silver Line, and they do it out of real passion and commitment. And this award is really for them, because if the children didn't trust us, if old people didn't reach out to us, and if we didn't have the staff and volunteers to answer their calls, I would never have received this amazing bird. I think I'm a funny old bird, but this is a very magnificent one.
And I was just going to say, in that room, 390 women were there today. It's the most inspiring, isn't it, invigorating kind of afternoon that you could have.
The other thing is, the fact of the Woman of the Year lunch, I think, should be a message that goes around the world, because the world would be so much poorer without the achievement of those women. And we look at other countries like Afghanistan, where women are not given the opportunity to have the education and the training and the capacity to achieve that we in Britain do. So the message of the Woman of the Year lunch is, women are crucial. They can make a difference. Let them.
Esther Ranson, Woman of the Year Lifetime Achievement Award. Thank you very much for joining us. That's an incredible event. Now, Sally is here, and I know you've been in Epping Forest. Why?
Well, Epping Forest, you may not know, has hundreds and hundreds of species of fungi, mushrooms. And in fact, last year alone, they found 22 new species. But there is a problem. People are going into the forest and taking them, be they one or two or loads of them, to sell. And what a lot of people don't realise is they're a really important part of the whole ecosystem of the forest. And the people that run the forest are desperate. They are pleading to people, leave them alone. So I went to find out a little bit more about it and how important they are. So we'll take a look.
To some, they are the jewels of the forest. To others, rather alien looking. But to this woodland, they are a lifeline.
Oh, look, it looks like something's nibbled that one.
Yeah, that could have been a deer that done that, or flies on the top.
Epping Forest is a vast ancient woodland, as special as its species of fungi.
We've had recorded 1,500 different types of fungi, which I can't name all of them.
I'll let you off.
The fungi are integral to the health of the forest, not just for creatures to eat, but, here's something I didn't know, for trees to flourish.
Tristan, tell me why fungi are so important to a forest like Epping and a tree like this.
The fungi play a really key role in helping trees get nutrients and water into themselves that they can't get out of the soil. And of course the trees also provide nutrients back down into the mycelium, which is the fungi. So they're both getting something out of the purpose.
Sort of feed each other?
Yes.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
But there is a pest here, and that's people, picking them and taking them, be it just a few or bag loads to sell.
It's actually against the bylaws of Epping Forest to pick the fungi, and the staff here would rather educate people about just how important they are. But in the worst case scenarios, they can, and they have, prosecuted.
This photo is one example of what's been taken, and 27 people have been fined and prosecuted in the last 7 years.
One of the big things I think is a problem is people don't get to see these wonderful things that are quite rare and quite specific to ancient woodlands such as Epping.
This area is not easy to police, so they are relying on people to do the right thing, to look but not touch in this beautiful forest where nature must be nurtured.
So I'm told it's going to be sunny and warm this weekend, sort of mushroom weather.
Well, actually, sort of. We're sort of coming into the mushroom season, but it's been quite obviously wet, so that's quite good for the fungi. But I think they're waiting for a slightly colder snap to really make the fungi come out. And in terms of our weather, it's obviously been lovely over the weekend. Did you get to go out and about?
I did. I had a lovely long walk.
Oh, Good for you. I spent most of it inside, although I did go to see Six the Musical, which I highly recommend. But we've got high pressure over us this week, which of course brings that settled weather. So as we head through the week and into the weekend, things are going to be really nice, but it's just that little bit colder than it was last week. But maybe you're ready for a coat. Let's take a look. Here's all the details.
Making the most of it, whatever the weather. Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
Well, I hope you had a good start to the week. There's been some beautiful weather out there today. In fact, it's hard to believe it's London, really. It's looking at the Thames from Twickenham, a really gorgeous shot, more like a painting. Now, this week, we are going to have some cloud around, some sunny spells. It's a little bit fresher than last week. Temperatures just a bit down on last week, but round about average for October, early October, certainly. And we have got a few pockets of mist and fog in the mornings. Now, things are quite settled because high pressure is staying over us. This front to the east of England just bringing probably a little bit of cloud tomorrow, and then as we head into Friday there's another front sinking south, but nothing too disruptive, maybe a bit of drizzle on it. We'll keep you posted, but the weather's staying quite settled at the moment into the weekend as well. So back to tonight, that cloud tending to clear, and with the starry skies, of course, the temperatures dropping down, maybe not quite as cool as last night, but still pretty fresh by tomorrow morning. Maybe even the odd spot of grass frost in those prone areas. And there might be a few little pockets of mist and fog, which will lift as we go through tomorrow morning. Probably the best of any sunshine in the morning. As we head through the day, more cloud moving in, possibly a bit more cloud than today and slightly lower cloud too. So a duller day, but there will still be a few pockets of sunshine and it should stay mostly dry during the daytime. The temperatures may be just a degree down on today. As we head into the evening, if we are going to get any rain, that's probably when we're most likely to see it. But like I said, most areas staying dry. And then for the outlook, well, we have got a fair bit of cloud around, variable amounts of sunshine, still a little bit uncertain about how much. And you can see the temperatures, not too bad, but they are cooler than last week and just dipping down again a touch as we get to Friday. That's it. That's your full forecast. I'll see you later on. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
The ITV News continues with the national and international stories at 6:30. Here's a look at what's happening with Mary.
Coming up in the programme, why delays at the country's biggest container port could hit choice for consumers this Christmas. A shortage of lorry drivers and staff at Felixstowe are to blame for the backlog. Expectant mums are urged to get the COVID jab. Almost a fifth of critically ill patients are unvaccinated pregnant women. And the racing honour for the Queen. Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
And finally from us, the red carpet at the London Film Festival last night lit up with the arrival of one of Hollywood's most famous couples. The Clooneys were in town for the premiere of George's new film, The Tender Bar. He joked turning 60 this year was better than the alternative. And it turns out the actor turned film director also has a rather sticky parenting style that may not go down so well at school. Sally Bildoff has more.
Not yet.
Ever since appearing as Dr. Doug Ross in ER in the 90s, George Clooney has set pulses racing. Now, after a milestone birthday and emerging from lockdown, he's doing it again, charming his way along the red carpet at the premiere of his film, The Tender Bar.
It's just fun to see people again. You know, honestly, this is the first time I've seen a bunch of faces in a long time, and it's nice. I enjoy it, and this is the first time I put a suit on in 2 years. It's weird.
And as for wife Amal...
Well, she dresses that way all the time. In the morning, she comes in, you know, you want coffee? She dresses like that.
Channeling old-fashioned glamour, Team Clooney have recently celebrated 6 decades of George.
Turning 60 is not fun, as you can imagine, but it's better than dead. So I'll take it, and then I'll take whatever job I can get. You know what I'm saying? He's not 60, so he can laugh.
Keeping him young, though, are the couple's 4-year-old twins, and he's honing his dad jokes.
I like it. I'm really having a time of my life. I know I'm doing everything wrong because I'm doing all the things that I know will make my son and daughter, they're going to think that it's funny to put like Nutella on your shoes and pretend like it's poop. They're going to think that's funny. I think it's funny. You know, it may not go so well in school.
Parents' evenings are going to be interesting. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
Looking very good. We're back with the latest after ITV News at 10. Coming up, Mary with the ITV Evening News. But from me and the rest of the London team, bye-bye.